Welcome back to Let's Talk Apprenticeships, where we talk all things apprenticeships, getting them, the myths, the legends, and the opportunities that come out of it. So we are coming to you from the Sunrise Studio, brought to you by Breed. And today we're talking about work experience, or getting that pre-experience before an apprenticeship.
Certain, and I like to say, work experience, a path to an apprenticeship.
That's it. So I'll share my journey getting into my apprenticeship, bit that I missed out of. I did work experience in year 10. So what work experience is of pretty much free work for a week. And the outcome of that is you get to know the workplace, you get to know tools, the work environment, you get to see if you like it or not. But then the employer also gets to see how you work. And even if the employer doesn't have an apprenticeship available, they can give you a reference as well for then to go to your next job or to add to your resume in there. So that was me doing work experience. And work experience is something that I recommend to pretty much everyone who can do it.
Yes. As they very commonly say about work experiences, try before you do it. Yeah? So I think it's a good opportunity, and the best thing about the Australian education system is that the Department of Education in pretty much every state has a bit of a structure around it. In some states, it's called a structured workplace learning or just a work experience program. It's got paperwork which needs to be done. There are some checks with employers and all that. So it's a very, very structured process in place already, which is commonly understood by the community and the schools and the industry alike. It doesn't mean that people who are not in school cannot do work experience. So most organizations have that opportunity as well.
Yeah. So usually when it's like from school and a school student's doing it, generally it's called work experience.
Yes.
Then some places you can do a work trial if you're a mature age, where it might be 1 week of paid work, but you're only committed for that week. And then another thing that we mentioned before as well, before we jumped on the podcast, was I actually got a part-time job while I was in year 10.
Yeah.
So this is something that's available to pretty much anyone, where a local workshop, they work Saturdays. And I said, hey, could I come in and work on Saturdays to get that experience? And it was a paid position. I got to learn. I got my familiarization up with the tools and everything. And even though I was quite young when I started my apprenticeship, that part-time job kind of set up can really help mature age people enter into the trades as well, because, you might not be able to quit your day job, but you might be able to do a few hours on a Saturday to get that work experience in.
It is, and I think I always say if the two things can happen after a work experience, that you may want to do it definitely, or you may definitely not want to do it. And I say it's equally a good outcome, okay? And with work experience, I always say try a few workplaces so that you can see the difference in the work culture, the variety of work you get. And in the work experience, you also get to see people working in different roles, starting from what is an apprentice doing, rather what is a first year, second year, third year, fourth year apprentice doing. What is that guy or girl doing who's just out of his apprenticeship, and what is that person doing who's been 10 years out of it? What has the manager done? So it gives you a bit of that. It gives you an understanding of the industry, and it pretty much gives you a very accelerated picture of what your life is going to be over the 10 years in the business, in the industry, in that vocation.
Yeah, that's it. And what are some other ways people can get experience before entering an apprenticeship?
Look, I think you've mentioned, getting a part-time job in that field. But also, I think if you know someone who can offer you that, it could be a relative, it could be a friend of a friend, who can give you that shadowing experience as well with some hands-on. In other things, I've also seen people buy maybe an old engine from scrap and just dismantling and assembling it. It could be assisting your mom and dad in whatever they're doing if they're doing at home. So that is also calculated as work experience. Maybe volunteering, somewhere. In some places, they have this men's shed or women's shed as well, where the experienced and retired tradespeople will get together in the community and run some kind of a furniture workshop, or they might be maintaining a old train in that, the little park or something like that. And they cover a lot of aspects of how to use hand tools, how to assemble and dismantle things, how to maintain things.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of like intro to or basic woodworking or handy people kind of courses as well going around too, that are run in a lot of different locations. So I know like locally there is the Remakery, which is like a business setup that's encouraging recycling of different projects, and they kind of help and guide people to upcycle different things as well, which is pretty cool.
And the other thing I've seen is that a lot of TAFE colleges now offer pre-apprenticeship courses. Now they are available for all ages, and people can come. It ranges from 6 weeks to maybe 3 months sometimes, or even more, where they undergo a cert 2 of a certain qualification. And I can talk about the automobile industry, and they have a cert 2 in auto. So these pre-apprenticeship students will come and attend those things, get the theory and practical training in the college. And part of that program is to find a work placement in an industry. And again, the TAFE colleges are connected to the industry, and they will place the students. Now, in my past life as a apprentice program manager for 13 plus years, I have employed some of those pre-apprenticeship candidates who came for work experience, eventually become good apprentices. And because often they are mature age, they will finish their apprenticeship early through competency-based completions. And some of the people who've come to me asking for a job, actually I've diverted them to the apprenticeship program, pre-apprenticeship program. They enroll into that, and that gives them permission to come and do industry work experience. The TAFE, that program covers their insurance, which is an important aspect. And they have found lifelong employment and a career out of that opportunity.
Yeah, that's it. And I think like sometimes, depending on who you are, what your background is, you might be experiencing some barriers where employers might be saying, hey, you're not the right candidate for this position. And I think pre-apprenticeship courses can really allow you to fill that gap. If someone has told you you're not the right applicant for a position, then it's something that you can actively do to then become the right applicant for the position.
And certainly, I think again, work experience has a very significant impact on the recruitment process. Now, again, I'm not saying that is the only way, but if I'm an employer, and I've been on that side of recruitment as well, that if someone comes and I've done X thing all my life, now I suddenly want to do an apprenticeship, and if that happens in people's lives at any point, that I want to do this, and suddenly 2 days later, they find it's not for me. But the impact on the recruiting business is immense, because the person showed passion throughout the process. But if they have done work experience, then there is a proven, sustained over a period of time exposure to the industry. And that gives us more confidence that what they're saying as this is what they want to do is now backed with substantial evidence that they know what they're saying, right? And hence the work experience is often favorably looked upon at the time of recruitment.
That's it. And even with work experience, like you were saying before, there's like, you either know you really want to do it, or then now you know you don't want to do it. But then also, like an apprenticeship, how we were talking about those soft skills are transferable anyway. So if you get a referral or a recommendation from that work experience, even if, say, you do a work experience in mechanics and you want to go become a hairdresser, that referrals say that you've rocked up on time, that you're enthusiastic, that you're keen to learn, and all that kind of stuff is interchangeable no matter what industry you end up going in after that work experience.
So now, Louise, if I say some employers are watching this podcast at the moment, so if you are recruiting, you are thinking of recruiting apprentices, and if you haven't used work experience as a channel, I highly recommend using that. Now, do you think employers should have a bit of a structure around their work experience programs?
Yeah, I think if employers have a bit of a structure around their work experience programs, it can really make them so much more accessible and really expand that pool of applicants, where they might get, the shy 15-year-old girl come in and do work experience that then turns out to be a great applicant, or, a mature age apprentice that was like, I don't even know if my body can handle this, but then they've proven that it can, and then they go into. So that work experience program can really allow applicants to shine through. It's more than just the paper.
Exactly. Now, think about your own work experience days in a large organization, which I was there to see you do that. So talk us about your mindset coming on the first day, and what made you ease into the work experience and eventually make it work for you.
Yeah, I think it's mostly coming in with curiosity.
Yes.
So there's a lot of nerves, there is a lot of unknown, but if you go into work experience curious, you'll get out an immense thing. Like, you will push through that kind of shyness to be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you don't have to talk about yourself, you don't have to be overly social, but if you're curious about the work, then people can see you're interested.
Okay.
And you get to learn a lot.
So as a work experience student or candidate, how can you make a very, very good impression on the prospective employer?
So there's the basics of turning up on time, taking your breaks to the time limit, being as helpful as you can, following any rules or safety requirements that are put on you. Another thing that you can go up and above and beyond with that is do like a workplace portfolio. So it can be as detailed or as basic as you like. It could be some photos. It could be like a little diary entry saying, today I worked with this person and we did this job because it had this fault. And it just shows that bit of interest. It helps you retain that information. And when you go in for your interview, or if you do go into an interview, you can bring that along, and it can really back up your case as a good applicant.
So by the way, Louise did that herself. As a 15-year-old person, she photographed, she made some nice sketches, and she wrote something about every day she was in that business, which she eventually got an apprenticeship. So that's something which seems very simple. Now, being on this side of the table interviewing you, we didn't care. You did a good job, by the way, with that journal. But at that point, we didn't care. The very fact that you bothered to do that impressed us, because we didn't look at how accurate your sketch was or how accurate a description. It was the very fact that you thought of doing that is what impressed us about you. That if you can do that voluntarily, then certainly you are going to be a future employee who's going to be doing things, by the procedure, but definitely your own initiative will come into play as well. And that shows, in a way, how keen you are to get into the industry.
Yeah, so pretty much we've covered some tips and tricks on work experience or any experience to get, in between that time where you decide that you want to do an apprenticeship and getting it. It might be a really short amount of time. You might get that first apprenticeship that you apply for, but if you do have a bit of time in between and you're looking at boosting your application, then work experience, pre-apprenticeship courses, part-time work is something that you can really do to solidify your resume.
Certainly, and look, candidates and employers are like, if you're looking to develop a bit of a structure on work experience programs, candidates, if you need a bit of a coaching on on how to do it well, and likewise employers, if you need to establish a program, which you can use effectively to recruit some good apprentices, which, by the way, is less expensive than actually running a recruitment program without knowing what you're doing. Yeah. So I think a bit of a plug, slightly, but look, I will say work experience for me is one of the most effective ways to find a good apprenticeship, and and also for an employer to find a good apprentice.
Yeah, that's it. And you can find us on our social media, our Instagram page, Let's Talk Apprenticeships. If you want any support on either side of the table as an employer or as a possible apprentice, you can contact us at our email address, which is in our bio. And really, we'll see you in the next episode.
Certainly, and before I say goodbye, thank you once again to Breed Australia and Sunrise Studio for the fabulous facility for us to be able to do this podcast. So thank you and see you again.